one of the most wildly successful and re-release horror games of all time, Resident Evil 4, is without question one of Capcom's most celebrated games among critics and players alike. A classic among classics, it is widely considered to be one of the greatest games of all time, and is responsible for influencing untold numbers of action games. I myself have been a longtime fan, and a vocal fanboy in a lot of my older videos, but as always, we are setting aside nostalgia, so with a fresh attitude, let's dive in. Resident Evil 4. Is it still good? Is it still a certified classic? But first, allow me to refresh your freshness a bit. Due to its long, troubled development and hardcore fanbase, there is an incredible amount of information and misinformation about Resident Evil 4's development. So with that disclaimer thrown out, here's the short version of what I was able to dig up. Resident Evil 4 started way back in 1998 with Resident Evil 2 director Hideki Kamiya at the helm. Famously, this initial development phase became Devil May Cry, ironically because it was thought too actiony to be Resident Evil 4. As producer, apparently Shinji Mikami himself campaigned furiously to shutter this version and instead push it to a new IP. Next, Capcom brought in Hiroshi Shibata to direct the build I like to call the Foggy Stormy Night in an Airship Castle version, which was shown in the 2002 Tokyo Game Show. Now, there's speculation that parts of this version were reused in Haunting Ground, like the castle setting, and most notably rumors of a girl trying to escape the castle with a dog. I really want this to be true, but I couldn't find any definitive confirmation. I like to think that this is the dog that made its way into the final cut, putting Haunting Ground and Resident Evil in the same fictive universe, but either way, this version was scrapped too for not being a big enough evolution. The next phase would be the quote-unquote Hookman prototype, which to me always looked more Silent Hill inspired. It was shown at E3 2003. While this is happening, the business side of things get interesting. Despite a string of hits on the newly minted PS2, in 2001 Capcom announces Resident Evil 0, the Resident Evil Remake, and Resident Evil 4 as GameCube exclusives. This gamble with Nintendo doesn't pay off, however. Capcom has a bad year with all of its 2002 releases, underperforming to the tune of a $163 million loss. As a result, Shinji Mikami, director of the remake and then producer of RE4, is given an ultimatum. RE4 better sell or else. So, he scrapped the Hookman build and stepped in as director, ousting Shibata, though he would still be top billed under Mikami as a lead designer. After these 3 versions, there was supposedly a 4th prototype that finally resembled the more action-focused version of Resident Evil 4 that shipped. While there is speculation that this one featured zombies instead of the more able-bodied villagers and hooded creeps, this build was never shown to the public and there's not a lot of information about it. Now up to this point, RE4 had twice been announced as a GameCube exclusive, first in 2001 with 0 and the remake, and then in 2002 along with the marketing disaster known as the Capcom 5. But on Halloween 2004, 2 months before the GameCube version even shipped, Capcom announced that Resident Evil 4 would be coming to the PS2 on the following Halloween. Clearly some stuff went down behind closed doors, because this game shipped with Only for GameCube still on the cover. Even with a 10-month head start, the PS2 version handily outsold the GameCube version by nearly a margin of 2-1. Resident Evil 4 would go on to become an enormous hit, though not before what Shinji Mikami swore would never happen. Again, this is the very abridged telling of what is known. We may never know the full behind-the-scenes story, but we do know the lasting impact of Resident Evil 4. Here are the game's claims to fame. Number 1. The over-the-shoulder snapping camera. Resident Evil 4 single-handedly changed the third-person perspective of video games. When Leon's weapon is drawn, the camera snaps to his shoulder, not behind his head, not above his head. Hell, some games didn't even think to have the camera pivot to what you were aiming at until Resident Evil 4. Grand Theft Auto, Uncharted, Gears of War, Batman, Dead Space. After Resident Evil 4, this became the standard for third-person action games, though the requisite crouching behind waist-high walls came later and from different sources. Fun fact, this groundbreaking camera was inspired by Onimusha 3. Mr. Mikami apparently loved that game, but hated the camera. Him pondering a solution led to what is now the industry standard. Number 2. QuickTime events. Now, before you start yelling at the screen, yes, QuickTime events suck. And yes, Shenmue deserves their credit for really creating them, but God of War was the one that started the trend of obnoxiously shoving QTEs into everything. I don't know if a game has since had smarter use of QTEs than Resident Evil 4, using them almost exclusively in cutscenes and as defensive moves. But either way, QuickTime events are a part of video games, and Resident Evil 4 is one big reason for that. Number 3, it saved Resident Evil and brought horror to action. In the time between the Resident Evil remake and Resident Evil 4, the series was in a bit of a lull. I don't think Outbreak and Dead Aim was setting anyone's world on fire, and Silent Hill was busy putting out the series' finest games. Other than the likes of Nightmare Creatures or The Suffering, you know, those timeless classics, action was action and horror was horror. Resident Evil 4 changed that, plus put the series back on the map. And yes, RE4 does not feature zombies, and even I will agree it's not very scary. There's still plenty of horrifying things that happen along the way, and some fun, creepy environments. If you actually want the shit scared out of you, you should check out Silent Hill 2, but you can still play RE4 in the dark and have a fun, spooky good time. That's all fine and dandy, but let's get down to brass tacks. Resident Evil 4, is it still good? Is it still a certified classic? And the answer? Yes! But it shouldn't be! Resident Evil 4 is out of control. Its long, bloated, hedonistic campaign is straining with set pieces, brimming with complex one-time use assets, crowded with weird puzzles, overwrought with bosses, a go-nowhere story with like 20 villains and characters that literally show up unannounced and then just leave. Every dev team that goes way over budget, way past their deadline, is way overly ambitious, thinks they are making this game. Resident Evil 4 is a goddamn unicorn. This game should not be good. I have a running hypothesis that all the scrapped versions weren't really scrapped, not entirely, because Resident Evil 4 feels like 5 or 6 games of varying size all crammed into one package. Remember that weird lava section with the fire-breathing dragons? That one hallway with pendulums? Where Ashley suddenly has a Class A CDL license? Listen. This entire video could just be, get a load of this crazy thing, or have you seen this weird Easter egg? But Resident Evil 4's set-piece insanity is exemplified here, in this moment. After avoiding a spike ceiling trap from villain number 143, Leon and Ashley stride down an otherwise innocuous hallway, when a gate suddenly separates the two and a giant grinder bursts through the wall. All you have to do is simply shoot the two drivers, sitting out in the open like Christmas chickens, to raise the gate and bring Ashley to safety. That's it! And you have like a solid minute to do it. How many man-hours went into building this sequence? The grinder, the collapsing wall. For what, like 20 seconds of gameplay? Of a game that, on your first playthrough, was like 20 plus hours? Yeah, 20 plus hours. That's like 5 Call of Duty campaigns. And holy shit, I don't even have time to talk about the Mercenaries mode, which is so big it did become its own game, but my god. Every little piece is polished to perfection. If compromise is one of the pillars of artistic creation, then what idea was too ridiculous for Resident Evil 4? It's even more impressive when you realize that outside of the village section, almost nothing is ever repeated. But that's really the problem here. RE4 has a rough start, and I think that's what turns away those few who don't share the enthusiasm. At first, you're saddled with weak, lame weapons, and it takes some time to adjust to that faint laser sight. The first big set piece in the village can be really tough. You're light on ammo, and even though they give you the shotgun, you're way under-equipped to take out that super tough chainsaw guy that spawns when you enter the house. Even though this scene features my favorite line ever uttered in a video game.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
The whole thing was way harder than I remember it being. This is because the combat at first feels incredibly limited, more so now than it did in 2005. Between RE1's tank controls and RE4's stationary gunplay, Shinji Mikami is one of the kings of what I call stubborn game design. Basically, you can make your game control any way you want, so long as every aspect is supported in the gameplay. It's why Mega Man doesn't duck, it's why Simon Belmont doesn't move in the air, and it's why Leon goes into siege tank mode every single time he draws his gun. On paper, these seem like obtuse choices, and it's true, some people just can't wrap their brain around these concepts. But if you design your levels, enemy behavior, and combat encounters just right, it can elevate the experience to something unique and memorable. Leon doesn't move when his weapon is drawn. Now, this is something that's addressed in almost every game that came after Resident Evil 4, but let's break it down. Enemies will swarm you, but there's an invisible buffer around Leon that slows most enemies to a walk. Some will rush you, but typically after a brief pause. Feeling overwhelmed? Well, that's what shotguns, grenades, and the good old pistol and roundhouse kick combo are for. Even if one of them gets a hold of you, kicking them off sends out a small shockwave. There are many ways to push back the crowd. Managing the distance and controlling the crowd is the name of the game. Leon's view is very limited, but this is also smartly addressed. Now, cheap shots from behind are telegraphed by audio cues of maniacal laughter, or, if you speak Spanish, enemies apparently literally saying, "Hey idiot, I'm behind you." Enemies from far away love to throw their weapons when you're not paying attention, but listen for the audio cues, time your shots right, and you can deflect thrown objects easily with return fire. It's a complex symphony that will be completely undone with the strafing and dual joystick movement found in, say, Dead Space. Though I will concede that laser sight is really faint, but it wasn't long before I was scoring headshots from across the room with my Red 9. You get used to it. But that's the mantra here. You get used to it. It almost doesn't work, and for a bit I actually was leaning on, nah, this doesn't hold up, but stick with it. Around the time it clicks is when the good weapons show up, and you'll discover that Resident Evil 4 has some of the best firearms ever. Every weapon is insanely fun to shoot due to incredible sound, control, animation, and from how many ways the enemies can receive damage. New Game Plus is arguably more fun than the normal game because it is so much fun just dusting fools with your fully upgraded guns. A lack of a grenade button and having to constantly pause the game to switch your weapons is a huge pain. This is one place where the game definitely feels dated. The GameCube had that D-pad that went basically unused, but you know what, it's not that big of a deal. Oh, and one more thing. To the people who claim that Ashley ruins the game and turns the whole thing into a glorified escort mission, come on, it's like y'all never played GoldenEye. At least Ashley has the damn common sense to duck or get behind Leon when he's shooting. Also, she can keep up. Y'all never play Silent Hill 2 or 4? Or what? She's annoying, yelling all the time? Sit down with Yoshi's Island and see what's good with Baby Mario. And in some sequences you can tell Ashley to hide in the dumpster, which is pretty hilarious. And I'd be remiss to finish this video without mentioning the merchant's hilarious dialogue.
Stranger, stranger, now that's a weapon.
And hey, it's that dog. I can already hear the comments section burning up about Resident Evil 5 and 6, and it brings up a good question. Did RE4 ruin Resident Evil? That's a tough one. I mean, ask Capcom. They've ported Resident Evil 4 to every device imaginable, and Resident Evil 5 is reportedly their single best-selling game ever. In a way, it did, but after the remake flopped, can you really blame Capcom for pushing the series in the direction it went? But maybe things are on the up and up. We are finally getting that remake of Resident Evil 2. For as much as I love RE4, I am eager for the time when horror will move away from the action genre, but that doesn't keep Resident Evil 4 from being a certified classic worthy of its legendary reputation. Thank you so much for watching. This is a Patreon supported show. Huge shout out to all my backers on Patreon. If you would like to support the show and have your name here, feel free to do that, or just keep watching, liking, and subscribing. We have updated our Patreon. We have new tiers and new milestones and new crazy stuff. Check that out. We have a live channel where there's old videos, lots of stuff. Thanks again for watching, and see you again real soon. At least Ashley has the damn common sense to duck or get behind Leon when he's shooting. Oh my god!